All right, folks. Hey, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Not Monday, of course. Today's Tuesday, day after Labor Day, day before my birthday. Great to have all of us though back here inside our live trading room. Grant, Uday, Chuck, Debbie, you got Wayne, Tom, got Dave, you got John L, one of our new students I just finished a call with just before. Got all of us just joining us right back here. Now, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., popping up lower left right there, right below my ugly mug, partially at least, at Cyber Trading U. If you're new to our channel, new to our stream, new to our platform, on any of these social media platforms that we're on, X, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc., just down below, hit the follow or subscribe button, respectively. We are on YouTube, though, mainly at Cyber Trading U. That's our account on YouTube, at least. So make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button down there. But I'll tell you what, we've had a hell of a day coming off of Labor Day. It doesn't matter if my birthday's tomorrow or not. We came off a major holiday. Markets were closed yesterday, and you don't normally expect too much to happen, right? Well, that's where this stock, HWH, just completely took off. It's up nearly 400% right now. This was on our morning watch list early on here today. We nailed it on this trade. We, as in we, not just me and Fausto, but all of our students here inside our room. You guys killed it on this trade. So we're going to go over this stock at least to begin. But it wasn't even just this. There were a few other stocks that we'll have the chance to go over, recap. At a couple emails that got sent in earlier. Appreciate you, April. We'll go over her question on Alibaba. But you know what? Actually, let me start off on this because this is just like partially funny. I'd rather this not be the case, but since it's the case, you just got to make fun out of it. You just got to laugh at it, right? But, you know, I was saying to our students earlier, like, you know, hey, the SPY just keeps breaking lower. I blame Kramer, right? And, you know, generally speaking, that might sound pretty funny because, you know, generally, more often than not, at least, he's wrong. And generally, he'll jinx everything. Last time we talked about this, I think he ended up calling out the top on Palantir by saying, yeah, it's definitely going to 200. And it was pretty much right here on this day. And it just collapsed immediately after, like literally that day. So, you know, just early this morning, this is just funny. Early this morning, during my insomnia hour here, all of a sudden, I check on X, I check on Twitter. I see from 3:51 in the morning, it was 9 minutes before the pre-market opens. You got this guy opening his mouth, saying September is seasonally weak. We have some inflation numbers and a potentially tough labor number, but this presidency can defy any seasonality, so I wouldn't bet on the calendar. Come on, Kramer, what are you doing? You know what you're doing. That's nasty work. That's real nasty work here out of Jim Kramer because the second the pre-market opened up, just immediately down. And we're still dropping here, it seems. I guess we're trying to hold support for right now, I reckon, off 635. But Kramer, what'd you do, man? Come on. Now, at this point, though, we're still generally holding higher lows on the long-term graph. So, you know, even if we do have more of a drop, I would definitely be more interested in seeing if we could hold over 617, 620-ish. We talked about this last week. What happens if there's some major event that happens that you and I can't predict? The markets crash a bit. We already plotted out our levels. We talked about this 1 week ago if you were with us in Traders Talk. Hey, and if you're not, then certainly join us on YouTube again, down below, lower left. Dyslexic. Lower left at Cyber Trading U. Just make sure to hit the follow and subscribe button. It's one of our last videos that we have on our live stream there from Traders Talk last week. Went over our levels, even talking about the potential of this weekly gap getting filled here. But nonetheless, though, just wanted to bring that up at first, right? Come on, Kramer. Why do you jinx everything there? But let's go over the HWH trade because, quite frankly, you know, for like Wendy in our room or Leda, Ron, Chuck, Genevieve, you know, it doesn't matter what the markets are necessarily doing for us to make money, for us to capitalize. As day traders here with what we do at Cyber Trading University each and every day, it's a matter of looking at the gainers list, the losers list. Obviously, there could be great shorts with the market. You know, Brian and I were talking about a short on Lucid Motors earlier today. But, man, this HWH trade could not have performed any better, right? Now, right away, I want to begin by going over this from pre-market, though, because, you know, hey, if trading was so easy that, you know, if you're able to just buy here and then sell here every time, and if teaching this was so easy, then I would just be saying that to you, right? I mean, let's just start with the nitty gritty. Let's start with, you know, where it was moving pretty ugly at first, and that's in pre-market hours. I guess it popped here, it dropped here. Listen, I think this was on our morning watch list by 9:15, 9:20 Eastern. We did have this on our morning watch list at that point, right? But let me just say, though, from 7 o'clock in the morning to the right side of my chart right there, if you're looking at my screen for all of us here, what's the trend of this stock? What's the trend here as you're looking at this graph from 7 in the morning to the right side of my picture? From 7 in the morning, it's just about at like 290. The right side of my picture is at 248, right? So we're going down, right? And when a stock is trending down, who's winning that battle? The buyers or the sellers? Sellers. So, a couple of things I just want to point out here really quickly because we say this every morning inside our live trading room. It's one of the most important rules that we preach to you. I'll go into the whole conversation behind bending rules when need be, and that's not for everyone here, quite frankly. But we'll go into that in just a bit. The rule I'm the biggest stickler towards, or one of the rules I'm the biggest stickler towards, is waiting the first 5 minutes. When the market opens up, ding, 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 wait the first few minutes because it wasn't so quick that this ended up popping the way it did by 9:52 a.m. It seems like, hey, if we just waited a little bit to get that extra confirmation of the buyers starting to come back into this trade, the buyers starting to win this battle over again, there's still plenty of time to jump in right here off of this like resistance area, 270, right? Now that's easy to say in hindsight, but I just want to point out, hey, like all of us wrote to me earlier here just before, you said this stock was trending down. And hey, when a stock is trending down, you told me who's winning the battle. This is where I just want to yank everyone's leash here, including my own. When I'm trading, when I'm Josh the trader, I got to yank my own leash. Like, listen, let's wait the first 5 minutes. Hold back. There's probably going to be an easier trade on this stock after the first 5 minutes. Or there might be an easier trade on another stock out there that we'll look to discuss in just a bit. But, obviously this ended up breaking out pretty nicely. I'll go into the trade that we ended up taking. A lot of us here inside our trading room, I will be transparent. I didn't catch this off 270 to begin. Caught this off the next level higher. So I was more focused on the nuke trade going into the market open at first. But this popped pretty well. Let me just show where Bookmap had the icebergs. Looks like right around $3, right around 280. A couple larger sell orders out there, right? And then otherwise, just generally speaking, this was, at first holding over the VWAP. It smashed below it here and tanked. So this VWAP should be a resistance on the way back up again. And then the more it crashes into that VWAP price, you should be getting that next pop, that next break. So it seemed like it did it a little bit prematurely under the VWAP, like right below 270-ish, 275, pretty much in alignment with the VWAP at least, but that's where it made its first clean breakout at that point. Now, I ended up catching this trade when it popped over 3, even a little higher from that point. I'm very thankful that the chart played out the way it did. There are trades that I'll take that trades just fall into my lap because where the levels already are, and it's just perfect place, perfect time. It's good fortune. That happens. And it's for that exact reason that I don't beat myself up too much when I get stopped out and taken out on trades when I follow all of the right steps, because it goes both ways, right? We don't want to get too emotional about trading. But this is just where I'll say by the time this broke over 3, I didn't have a chance to jump in on the break above 3. And I was watching it move off of 270, kind of seeing where the next level was. And, I assumed that 3 was the next level. It was, but the chart played out really well to our favor here, we'll say. So here's that resistance at 3. And the more it tests it generally throughout the morning, like it did here early at like 4:45 a.m., hey, the more it keeps knocking into this iceberg, the more it keeps crashing into 3, the buyers should be winning that battle. So when it first had popped here after the open, right? I immediately said, okay, try and get in over 3. I wanted to wait though, because I thought it would take a little bit for it to break above 3 and stab over that level. So I turned over to another stock. I came back and it was already at like 306, 309, 310. And at that point, I jumped in. I ended up taking this trade right off at 310. Where are we? One of these candles here. There we go. Right here at 310, got filled. Now, why did I take it exactly there? Why did I chase it from 3, getting in 10 cents higher from where I should have. Um, General simple reason, I didn't know, or I didn't think if it would pull back to $3 on the way down here. So I figured, you know what, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. If this is such a big level, we should be getting a pretty big move off of it. 10 cents off the level is not as close as where I'd normally want to get in, but it's not a bad chase. Now, as far as the chart playing out in my favor, I'm not talking about the fact it popped. That's nice. But the reason that this did not pull back down to 3 as well is because although 3 was like the iceberg level, that wasn't necessarily the better chart level here early in the morning. Seemed like this topped off right around 308, 308 here, 308 here. Would figure that it would hold it over as support, and it fails to do that at least. So, where you'd figure potential support, you don't get it. All right, well, either way. Well, you know what? It smashed back above it here, and guess what held as support? So I noticed that shortly after I'd even taken the trade. That actually didn't play in part with my thinking behind taking it at 310. That was actually after the fact. I kind of realized that. I'm like, all right, that's I guess pretty fortunate situation there to have at least a pretty decent chart level right around 308, complementing the $3, and obviously made the big move shortly after. On this trade, though, let me see if I can even get my story straight here, because I mean, this thing got halted. This was all over the place. I ended up, oh, this is the one that I got out in full on. So I think I was in this trade through the halt. I got out at 421. Yeah, it was right when it reopened up. I ended up closing the trade out. I actually meant to close half this trade out, and I realized I was only in on 500 shares. So I clicked, sell, and I got out in full instead of half. I'm like, shit. So I ended up getting out maybe a little prematurely, but either way, it still worked out to our advantage because it fell back down. And guess what? Even if you left money on the table and it popped up a little higher without you, seemingly, if you waited in another 30 or 40 minutes here, there could have been a pretty good opportunity to take on this trade again on the re-break of resistance here. We had called out a pretty good chart level early this morning, right around the 430, 450, and pretty much the more it kept stabbing that level, there was a chance for it to break above it. Here's our comment. We made this post early this morning at 10:04 in the morning. I wrote to you saying HWH historical area. It's an area, so it's not just one price, but between 430 and 450, that should be resistance at first. So that's largely in part with taking the profit out there. Again, I meant to sell half, not all of it either way. But, just to say, though, that 430 right here, 434, 450. Hey, the more it keeps knocking on that door, the hope is to see continuation at least, right? Not every stock, though, is going to make a 370% move in one sitting. So, of course, as traders in our room, and listen, if you're more experienced and you've been with CTU, and I'm saying experienced as in with us, you know who you are. There are possibilities where a stock like this can go up even more. It can go up 500, 700% in one day. But granted, not all of them do. So if you're not up a lot already on this trade or throughout the morning, if you're not up already and you're looking for a move here, it is going to be a lot tougher to expect continuation when it's up 373% now compared to earlier when it was up maybe 200% earlier or 170%, whatever it was. We saw this back on Friday last week. We saw this on the IPDN trade, didn't we? I think we had pretty good, breakout trade here on this IPDN. Give me a quick moment here. Looks like my platform kind of logging up here just for a bit. I got also a question or two inside the chat. I'll try and answer those if we have enough time, folks. Just give me a brief moment here. I think my platform's lagging a little bit here. There we go. We're good now. So yeah, I mean, just on Friday, this thing took off, this IPDN from 2 up to 10, 500% plus move. Not all of these stocks will move up 500%. So it's just tougher to expect with ease. Oh, it's definitely going to do that. Are there risks that could be taken? Yeah. But otherwise, I feel a lot more confident with this trade, at least from 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning prior to that reversal hour. And then even afterwards, if it wants to prove itself to us, the more it keeps retesting, and then breaking above resistance, I'll feel a lot better about that, battle, the buyers winning the battle at that point. So, maybe here perhaps, right? It's taken some time to build a little resistance up top now. Let's actually go back to our long-term graph. We'll even kind of go back on this trade here. Like when was the last time this was trading in the sevens? Obviously back here from the end of last year, end of 24, it wicked up towards a price $7.20. That was a top. Then it came crashing right back down, 720. Looks like there's a wick here back in May of last year, 740. So I'll probably just loosely say those two prices put together, 720, 740. And obviously it's here now, kind of topping off at these prices. Now that's just the historical chart. So, what does Bookmap have to say? What does the volume really have to say here? It's easier to go back on the chart if you're more familiar with, plotting support resistance. Let's see. I mean, this is pretty far away from the VWAP price. VWAP's at 4. This is at almost 7. That's pretty crazy. So this should be due for a retracement. But this is where I'll just say, though, hey, the more it keeps poking and pecking resistance, I would even, say $7, but it looks like the chart level's holding a bit better. So the more it keeps kind of poking, I would even just go with up top. Let's just say the higher price for right now, that's 740. The more it keeps stabbing it, the hope is to see the breakout. If you see the breakout, the hope is to see the flip from that resistance into support. Just because you get the breakout doesn't mean that you're in the clear. It could be a head fake, it could be a false breakout. So even if it plays nice from this point going forward, and it wants to kind of peck that 740 area throughout the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and it breaks over it, that's nice. But let's keep seeing nice. Let's see resistance flip into support at the bare minimum. If it just blows the roof off this year and goes immediately up to like $10, God bless it, right? I mean, not every stock does that, let alone up 378% here. So, sec there. Didn't know what to do with my hands for a moment. No, but seriously though, obviously ended up making a great move from earlier today. If it's not going to try and make this pop here, then just hold off on it. There's going to be other stocks that move up 370% this week, if not today. I don't want to drop the G word and say I guarantee that, but this is what we said from the end of last week with the IPDN trade, right? It went up over 500% on Friday. The SOGP trade from the other day last week. This thing went from like 4 up to like $18 in a day. You know what this does? Because I think this is the one that started it off going into Thursday, into Friday, into today. When you see one stock make this type of move, it's gonna, open up the door for all of the crazies to break out the insane asylum. See other random stocks make these random short squeezes, sometimes not even off news, but obviously coming into today, you figure there could be some news coming out from over the long weekend, let alone the weekend. And if there's anything early in the pre-market that's moving well enough, it's trending up leading into the open, that's something I would have a lot more interest in. So transparently enough, this HWH is moving perfectly here. It has been. This may even look to try and test resistance coming up. But we all answered to me earlier. This stock was not trending up so well leading into the open. So it did take a little bit for this to start breaking out pretty nicely. It took about 20, 25 minutes, right? There was a trade I thought moving a lot better going into the open, and I was more focused on it personally. The nuke trade, NUKK. Now, this is also one from the other week. This stock made some crazy pop, crazy drop. We know it's a low float tease. This stock pretty much will make this move more often than it doesn't. So that's where it was actually pretty surprising back on Friday, back from the end of last week. This popped well for us in pre-market. I know it dropped back down shortly afterwards. This here was a really nice trade. It actually had, it was surprising. It was shocking to see the amount of orders that were there on the book going into the opening bell. So we traded this on Friday pretty nicely. And because it had popped this morning and because we traded it nicely on Friday, I wanted to focus more on this stock heading into the open today. The issue, though, is that this stock wasn't trading the type of volume it was trading on that Friday. The spread's open again. It was a lot more open than this here live right now. So at least the stock had popped right away. I'm looking at Bookmap. I'm looking to see where my levels are. And a couple things stand out to me here. So we had a resistance right around 535, the nuke trade. This is early in the morning here. So I just want to make this, post one more time. This goes to every single member inside our room. And I don't even tell you this just to have you focus on Josh's callouts. I have you do this to focus on Fausto's callouts, Josh's callouts, and Rich's callouts, because we're posting pretty good information there for you to, remember, write down yourself, keep in mind. So at like 8:48 in the morning, this is the first comment I had here on the nuke. Pop, but it doesn't have the volume it had on Friday. 532 to 535 was a strong chart resistance from Friday. It could be support, but we need more, volume, more orders to join the book. And pretty much throughout the pre-market, this was holding underneath 535. Pretty much, right? I mean, it wasn't breaking higher. It had a couple stabs here, and it just failed to get the job done. So going into 9 o'clock, it was just having a tough time. I was saying that, hey, it could still run up, but we need to see new support build. If not from that price, maybe the VWAP, right? Maybe the VWAP could be a good start. And it has resistance at 7. That's a potential target on this trade, right? Now, we'll get to the other comments in just a bit, but there's something I did here, I noticed, and I figured, what? See if this can try and be support. I normally don't try and get too artsy with my trend lines and my levels and whatnot, but I noticed something pretty interesting from Friday's graph. This built a nice pennant, and I remember in the moment here, I was looking at this and like sitting here, I'm like, you know what? You kind of have like a bottom here pretty nicely. You have a top here pretty nicely right around here. Delete my lines actually. And I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, the midway point between this like 450-ish and this 5, I think it was even this 530-ish, kind of just the midway point in this range that the stock was trading. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was right around like 495, $5. Actually, no what? No. That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Get my numbers all fibbed up here. Point being is that I ended up seeing a potential support right around 512, 513. And this was right before the market opened up. So I didn't do this on big size, but I ended up taking a stab on this trade as it was pulling back here right before the market was open. No, it was even here, right before the market was opening up. It was at 918. I didn't get in on these wicks. It was this one. But as it pulled back down, I'm thinking, all right, there's a chance for this to try and build up. I did this on smaller size. I'm definitely not going to do this on 1,000 shares right before the market opens. When the market does open, you definitely don't want to jump into anything, even if it does pop. I know it's easy to say that, oh, it popped. You could have just jumped in right away at 931. That's not necessarily the case. If you're in this trade from earlier, if you're in it leading into the open, you got to set your stop right away. This could have easily have just fell back down. Now, though, let's say this pops, and it did obviously here. After the first 5 minutes here, where do we jump in? Where is our next level on this nuke trade if you miss it? Because obviously this popped within the first 5 minutes. And if you're not in from during the pre-market hours, you should hold off. You should not be trading from 9:30 to 9:35. All right, well, we need to know where our levels are here. So let me ask our students right now, because I'll show you this answer in just a bit. I'm going to keep it on this heat map for HWH just to show you that this is tanking now. But let me ask Chuck, Grant, Andrea, Uday, Genevieve, Denzel, all of our students here. For a pretty cheap stock, what common set of price levels should often be considered support resistance? What do we got? What common set of price levels should be often assumed to be support resistance on a cheap stock? I mean, similar with the HWH here. This is getting beaten up bad now. Yeah, but the same thing, though, with the nuke trade, 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? That's where $7 as a whole number level, that's where you should assume for there to be an iceberg of some sort. And there was, at least all from pre-market, but that's a separate story. This is where you should assume for there to be an iceberg at 6 and maybe 550 also. But granted, this pops right away, breaks over 550 within the first few minutes here. So this is just to tell you, right around 9:35 in the morning, 9:36 in the morning, this is right at that $6 price, right? It was stabbing over six here. The more it's holding over six at the bare minimum, or just maybe this wick here, then you're in good shape. Even if it shakes you out at first, maybe it makes like a move where it kind of goes up, comes down at first, maybe a right place, wrong time type of moment, and then it comes back up again, right? Even if that were to have happened, that would still be a great opportunity to retake. Maybe it goes down to the VWAP first and then comes back up. Maybe you get it from there. Just point being is that this is very takeable. I know it worked out perfectly, right? That's easy to say in hindsight. But even if this didn't be as nice to you here, and if it shook down here and took you out on a small loss, and if it made that move shortly afterwards, about 10, 20 minutes after that, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Either way, there's no shaming here because it was just one and done. You get in from six, held higher lows, worked out pretty nicely to at least take you close to seven, if not all the way. So obviously this worked out, but why did this work out? Why was this so good? Because, hey, unlike the HWH, even though both were up percentage wise in pre market, this was trending up leading into the open. I know it popped to 845, but it was clearly making higher lows. I know it wasn't breaking out right here at first, right before the open, but higher lows, and you should look to get the higher high. That's all. So, that was my focus, at least leading into the open, for the reason that this was trending up leading into the open. I took a loss today on the stock SHFS. This was a 10-cent loss or 11-cent loss. I was in from 375, got out at 365, 364. But, hey, I thought this had a chance to make a better move. This wasn't looking great going into Fausto's 9 a.m. meeting. Like, what's the trend of this stock from 7:30 in the morning to the right side of my picture here? Very much down, right? Well, this started to bounce back up pretty well prior to the open, or at least I thought it was trying to. And then even afterwards, it did have a little pop to start. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, all right, maybe at some point today, it obviously pulled back within the first 5 minutes or right away afterwards. I jumped in on this trade. It was right here. It was after 10:30 in the morning, right? So it was after we finished up the audio, but I jumped in when it was trying to re-stab and re-break over resistance. Certainly, it was right place, wrong time, and there just wasn't another time afterwards, right? So I didn't take this trade again, and I was actually trying to because it was coming back up here. I had an order to buy, a stop limit order. If it were to pierce back over this price and it tanked, I pulled my order. That was it. So listen, they're not all going to be winners, but this is where I tell you, at least, you have to focus on trend first, then you have to focus on levels. If the stock is doing everything that you need it to do in order to get you in the trade, and you take the trade pretty close right from your level, hey, like all of us know here, I'm not going to have you recite it for me, folks, like I normally do, because I know that you know this. When a stock breaks through a big level, you should be getting a big move shortly after. So if you're not getting that big move, that big reaction, then at the minimum, at the bare minimum, this needs to hold as support. Maybe this holds as support for 20 minutes and then it goes up. I'll bite my tongue as that happens, but I'll be happy if I make money on this thing, right? It's a big move a long while after, not a short, while after. But that could work out, fine then, right? But if it's not even going to get the job done and flip this into support, then I'm out. I'll take the loss. See ya, right? Because better that than hanging on. So point being is that even on the HWH trade, we said before here, I mean, I thought it was pretty unlikely, but obviously if it wanted to play really nice, it would have to break above this, run, preferably, like break above it, run over, and then hold as support. It was just a pop and drop, right? And for it to be up 375%, near 400% here, this is not surprising one bit. Not one bit, especially since I guess it did, so to say, reverse at 10:15 in the morning. I guess it did, but this wasn't a full-fledged reversal, right? This was just a shake. It made a higher low and moved back up. This HWH stock, I'm sure that we've traded before, Fausto and myself here and our students, but what's the float? What's the float on this stock here? It's a 1.4 million share float. Let me ask our students here if you're familiar with float, and if you're a longtime student, you've kind of heard us go through this conversation before. Let me know. I want to hear from everyone here, all of our students. Would you classify 1.4 million share float? Would you classify that to be large or small? What do we got, folks? Large or small on that float? Kate, great to have you joining us here. Just catching the YouTubes right now. So Kate L on YouTube, great to have you here. Answering just before on one of the trades we were discussing, probably that HWH. A lot of our students saying small, very tiny. This is super tiny, folks. I mean, just for reference, for everyone's favorite stocks like Nvidia, Nvidia is a 23 billion with a B share float. Palantir is 2.1 billion with a B. I don't know, just like Novo. I know Fausto likes that stock. I like it too. Great swing trade off of 47 from a month back, but 3.3 billion with a B, right? So let's say I don't even know, just QUBT. This is a quantum stock that we've traded very frequently. And we love this stock, but it's not Nvidia, it's not Tesla. The stock has 135 million share float. All right, well, still, this is 135 times larger than HWH. So, just if you're a new member here, you're not going to be as familiar with this conversation, at least with how we discuss float. But, we don't really have a fixed number. I see Magnus saying low float is under 20 million for him. The lower the number is, the more pop and drop-ish it gets, the more volatile it can become. And we don't always appreciate volatility if there's no volume to back it up. Everyone, I guess, online has their own fixed number. You might hear from like X company here, Y company there. It's a certain number. For us, 25 million is a hell of a lot more than 5 million, right? I at least feel like, a stock with 30 million, 25 million share float, at least that's a slightly larger gas tank compared to HWH here, right? So that's kind of just the general way I think about it. Any large cap company, name brand company, large cap, you don't have to worry about like this conversation. You still have to worry about pop and drop, though. I mean, just look at a stock or company like Hims and Hers. This is a name brand company, household company that everyone or most people at least know at this point. I don't know the float off the top of my head. 183 million share float. That sounds pretty good to me. That's large. Well, this stock is still very susceptible to pop and drop moves. I mean, based off of news that comes out, FDA probing them, whatever the case may be. But point being is that, with these small cap stocks that you and I have never heard of until today, you can't trust them as far as you could throw them, right? So, that's always our initial attitude with these stocks. These stocks are day trading stocks only. They are not meant to be swing trades. If they go up day over day, that's fine by me. We'll just day trade them, right? Because last thing that you want to do is be on the top of the roller coaster looking down. I know this SOGP trade, I guess, popped today, but look at it back from Thursday. This thing crashed bad after the run up it had. Right place, wrong time. And if you don't set your seatbelt on, you're going to be screwed. IPDN pop and drop from them, the THAR trade, right? So, these are all low float, flavor of the day, flavor of the week type stocks. And if they prove themselves to us, then we'll take more of a liking to them over time. Even earlier this morning, I thought the THAR trade, I thought it was another stock. Maybe it was IPDN. One of these stocks, I think it was the IPDN, popped up at first here. There's no real trade on this stock if it's not making higher highs and if the order book isn't filled in. If you're going to have an empty order book and a big spread between the bid and between the ask, then odds are it needs to still prove itself to you. If it's not going to prove itself to you, then you sit back and you just wait, or you just focus on a different trade otherwise, right? But, I came off a couple of calls with students earlier today, not just coaching students, but brand new, CTU students that have joined our program. And, traders that have been doing this for like 10 years themselves, or, 26 years, even since 1999, one of our new gold students. This is just where, though, that if this looks a little overwhelming, if this looks a little hectic to you at first, it's meant to be. That's, kind of the expectation at first. But just realize that with any of these stocks that moved here today for us, like the nuke or the even the one from pre-market, actually before the whole morning started off, this was probably one of the better trades after 8 o'clock. This SSKN. I didn't take any action on this myself, but even this, could have been a nice mover here for you. This looks like it was a fast move. We need to understand why we're taking trades to begin. We're not just jumping in to jump in, right? Um, and if you have hesitancy on that right away, then we need to talk on the side. I never just jump in to jump in. We're not at a casino here, right? We're trying to make educated decisions with our money. Obviously, this popped, and the expectation is that news came out. Let's just assume that news came out. Whatever headline that came out, that's still not reason to just jump in. We need to know where our levels are. What resistance did this break over right here on these two candles? Was there any iceberg that this busted over? Where was the big volume that got filled? Because granted, if you wait the first candle and then jump in, 2 bars later just to do it, you're getting, shaken out. You're getting washed out at first here, right? Big drop. So this is just where, again, you need to ask, okay, this stock is clearly popping. Where are the levels? Where are the best, support resistance levels here on the heat map, on book map here? And hey, like a lot of us answered before, on the other trades, I would be more inclined to focus on 50-cent levels and whole numbers. That's my normal initial expectation. Looks like right at not 350, but at 340. There's about 10,000 shares there. And there was also about 10,000 shares here at this price, 380. So yeah, before we think about those 50-cent levels and whole numbers, looks like we had a resistance here instead. It broke it and came back down. Now, when it comes back up here, like what's easy to say is it kept popping up at this point. If you end up seeing this re-break over the first of these two levels, the 340, the name of the game is to at least see it flip into support. So right here, when it's re-breaking above that, as long as it's staying over this, then there's, a chance for this to run. And look what happens. This held pretty much perfect right over 340 shortly afterwards here, right? 340, 340, 340. And then on top of that, pun intended, literally on top of that, the icing on the cake, that's the pun. Here we go. You got a 31,000 share order out there on the bid. So shortly above where you had this resistance line that got broken over, it actually started off even beforehand here. This beautiful ladder on the bid. Beautiful ladder on the bid at 310. They bid up to 338. They bid up after that to 343. All right, well, that's great, but it's actually more the fact that it's re-breaking above resistance. The more times that this is stabbing above resistance, let me ask our students this one briefly. The more that a stock is stabbing over resistance, what color is showing up on time and sales? In the time and sales window, when big resistance is getting broken over, getting hit, ding, ding, ding. Seeing a lot of green, right? All of us answering green right there. And what do we nickname the green as? What type of pressure? Who's winning that battle right then and there? The buyers. All of us answering. Sam, Margaret, Chuck, Michael, Scott, Nabil, Tim, Day, Debbie. All of us saying buyers, right? Now, why are they so quick to answer that? Well, I kind of compare myself to like a drawstring doll. You pull the string from the back, you say the same 4 or 5 catchphrases over and over and over again. I mean that because, hey, the more that you're in this workshop, the more that you're in our classes, I work with you on the side in our coaching program, you're going to have this in the back of your head. And that's where this process becomes a hell of a lot easier to do on your own. And I don't even want to say on your own because we're all here together in our room, but you know what I mean. Like, hey, when this stock is making a move at 8 o'clock in the morning, of course, we want you to look at the chat board, see what we're calling out on this trade, the SSKN, what levels to look at here. I'd all but guarantee that Rich was calling out the ladder on the bid that was kicking in. Yep, right here. I'll show that here to you. And Leda was talking about it herself, 52-week high. Right? There's the ladder. There we go. There's the news. Okay, cool. SSKN. Probably a bunch of words I can't pronounce, a couple words above my pay grade. holds exclusivity and combination therapies, blah, 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 blah. All right. So that's just where I tell you, I'm not buying the stock because of that paragraph. I could barely pronounce a quarter of the words there. I'm buying this stock because it's breaking above resistance. It's re-breaking above resistance here. Now, again, I just want to mention the icing on the cake is really this iceberg here that helps us out. That's more fuel to the fire, right? So it's just to say this made for a great move. Made a big move shortly after, right? That's exactly what we're looking for. A big move shortly after. I mean, even if you squeeze 50 cents out of this trade and get out at 380, from one level to the next, that's not tiny move. That's not small chump change, right? Even on 500 shares, you lock in that type of profit. That's $250 profit. And that's all before the market even opens. Actually, that's within, technically, it's no race, but that's actually within about a minute and a half's time. So you don't even need to trade big shares to make big money, right? It's just a matter of A, knowing where your levels are first, B, ensuring that the stock you're working with is, literally trending up to start. I had no business with the stock here when it's dropping back down. There's no guarantee it comes back up the way it did. I'd rather have more confirmation, if not guarantee. Guarantee wouldn't be the right word to use, but more confirmation. So this is our confirmation. Sounds good to me. Jump in over 340, get out at like $4 here, or maybe less, maybe higher. Either way, you have enough room to make a lot of money. All right. So real quick, I told our students, if you have questions, first thing first, email me. And for any of my students that emailed me early on this morning, I'm going to get to you first. So let's go to April. I actually saw her email come in right before I jumped onto a coaching call. So I actually emailed her back instantly. I'm like, asked a couple of questions, and here we go. So, April just asked simply, can you review Alibaba? And I wrote back to her kind of as a follow-up. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, we'll cover it. And I just asked them like, hey, are you in this trade right now? And if you are, what price and what day did you get in? I say what day because this Alibaba stock's been on a tear since Thursday, right? Thursday last week into their earnings, made this big move. I guess they were holding support for a while beforehand. So April got in on the $150 option call, expires September 12th, but got out and will wait for it to break over $138 to go long again into the 150s maybe. Okay, cool. So first and foremost, hope April did very well with her trade. The one thing I will say is that 150 is a pretty far ways away from where it was trading at today, let alone from Friday. It worked out. I'm just pointing out that if you go a little too far out of the money, it becomes to a point where it's not as worth it. Because even if you get that eventual move, what if there's a couple of days of consolidation or chop or down? If you're doing an out of the money call, IV is going to be way higher to start. But if you're not going to get off on the right foot early on, then it definitely kills your profit potential. More time for you to have to get up to 150 to be quote unquote, in the money on that call. You're profitable, but you definitely want to have that move happen sooner than later. So normally what I'll try and do, I'm just giving my 2 cents on what I do with my options. I'll either go slightly at the money or very slightly out of the money, very slightly out if I feel pretty good about the trade. Because once the stock is moving up and it's well within your strike price area, you're going to make some good money exponentially. It goes up more and more and more, right? So maybe you'd make more money doing the 150 call if it goes up that high, but you're probably going to do just as well, if you lower the strike price a bit here to like 140, let's say. But let's just kind of go into the general move on Alibaba. We'll look at like the long term, then we'll kind of go into what happened recently. So long term, right? If we think about this as a potential swing trade, stock's been around, ended up seeing this make a beautiful run, and then it crashed, obviously. We want to focus on support. We want to focus on long-term support where we had strong, bounce areas. So let's even use this. Both of these prices put together, got the 128 area along with like 145-ish, 146-ish and change there. That was a great area because it fell down to it And what was the reaction after? Well, it completely took off up about 100+%. So I'm thinking that if Alibaba can regain over this area as a working support, there's a much better chance for this to get back up towards, loosely speaking, the wicks here. This is resistance. This is support. Now, funny enough, this kind of reminds me of Celsius. This reminds me of Celsius. The long-term graph there reminds me of Celsius, at least kind of looking at this move. So support, support. Now, it broke below this area back in July of last year and got crushed. I have a whole spiel about this. I was not a fan of this move whatsoever. I was very much against this move. And there was some clown on social media, on Twitter. You could probably figure it out, has hundreds of thousands of followers. And he was just engagement farming, trying to monetize his social media channel by just kind of constantly talking about the stock. Granted, it worked out a year later, but this was a sinking ship for a long time. Now, long story short, this did break below this area as support briefly, not much, but it regained back over it. And once it regained back over it, up, up, and away it went, right? So kind of thinking about Alibaba in that general context, kind of looking at it here on the weekly, it broke below it here. It dropped off a lot. So I am expecting this to flip into resistance right here. It did back from March or February into March. Now, at least if it sustains itself back over this area, it's already doing that from last week into this week. But as long as it stays over 128, I think there's a really good shot for this to accelerate back up again. Try and make a move back up to 200, 209 and change, 228 maybe and change. But that's just from a pure chartist standpoint. Now, let's actually kind of look at, like, on a more closer angle here, what happened back from Friday into today. So I probably don't have the Alibaba book map from last Friday, from the end of last week, but this is early in the morning. So, all right, where do we have our big iceberg here on Alibaba? Let's get April to answer this one. Let's get all of our students, though, otherwise. All of our students here put together. What do we got? I like that, Kate, on YouTube once again. Just checking out the chat there. Floats a boat. Where's that big iceberg order? What do we got? 135, right? $135. 23,000 shares will round up. That is a hell of a lot more compared to anything here in pre-market. And remember, this is pre-market. This is not the regular people hours. So to have this big giant order out here at the crack of dawn and after, it's there for a reason, right? I'd like to think it's there for a reason. Now it stabs it at first early. This is well before the market opens. So it does peck it a couple times, and the more it does that, it should break it. So you do get the breakdown at first. This is all before 9:30. Sellers are winning this battle. You are seeing the selling pressure ramp up here. So I wouldn't expect for it to be so fast, but this does make a pretty good pop to no. This does take, yeah, it took its time. This took about 5 or so minutes, 10 or so minutes even, to try and make a move back over VWAP. And even there, it took time to build support over the VWAP before it made a right. So just pointing out, at least even here on this one stock, kind of going back to the conversation we had on that small cap HWH trade from early, this morning, this was dropping off a little bit. I know it was up percentage wise in pre-market, whatever, but this still required time. This took about 15 to 20 minutes total after the market opened up, at least, for this to build support and then make the better move. Now, that's just kind of an intraday move looking at what happened from pre-market into this morning. Now, though, again, like long term, if you're thinking about this as a long-term trade, I like how this has taken some time for this to kind of trade within this range, but I don't know if it's taken enough time for it to break out of this range and go up higher. This might be resistance for a little while, just based on the timing of this. Maybe it even pulls back below this line one more time and then comes back up later into the calendar year. That's just a kind of quick thought. But just general sentiment is as long as it contains this, keeps with higher lows, I feel good about a potential move over time. Might be the beginning of next year into this area. Who knows, right? So, great question from April, at least on that one. Now, this was at least one. I talked about it last week, so just to go a bit into it from one of our students, Charles, just asking about what my thoughts are going forward on the stock market. I alluded to that earlier when we started this workshop. Kramer just kind of messed everything up this morning. I'm teasing when I say Kramer. That's just coincidental. But granted, if we happen to see continuation of these like lower highs and we pull back further into this week, everyone's saying that September is a very bad month historically. August and September put together, it's not just one or the other. Even if you go back to 2023, it was pretty much by the end of September, like September 20th, September 23rd. And that's when all hell broke loose, I think, there. Oh, pardon me. It was actually the end of October even. I get my months off a little bit there. It was the end of October into the beginning of November. That's when you started to get the next major leg up in this bull market here. And then even going into the end of last year, what was it? August, September time. You saw the beginning of October drop off a lot. You saw the beginning of September drop off a decent amount, but still built higher low. So I'm just pointing out today's September 2nd. I think we got a little bit of time here to see this play out. Not to say I'm bearish, but it's just that I'm a lot more reluctant to be an aggressive bull, at least across the major markets. Now, if you're focused on gold, that's a separate story. If you're focused on gold, that's a lot separate of a story, right? So we've been seeing this trade for a long while now in different ranges, back from 2020 into the beginning of 24. It was kind of within support resistance here and built up. Fausto flag took a lot of time for this to build. August of 2020 to March of 2024. So about 3.5 years worth of resistance, and it paid off pretty well. It's a similar pattern here, just not as extended. So, of course, with any asset breaking new all-time highs, there's no historical data to work off of, right? You don't need to go back. You shouldn't go back because it's worthless. What you can try and focus on is a potential measured move. It's not going to be so easy to look at it this way. Everyone kind of plots it a bit different. But where you look at this Fausto flag here on gold, GLD I'm using personally, it looks like you have a flag pull here. There's your flag kind of there, right? So I'm kind of using this wick going up here. And in the event that this is some sort of measured move, 272 and change up towards just about 317 and change. Not that smart, folks. I'm not the brightest bulb of this bunch. Got to break out the calculator here. 317 and change minus 272 and some change. It's about a $45 flag, breakout. You have the flag pull worth about $45 worth here. Now, if this is going to be a clean, measured move, if this is going to work out in this context, then the target should be about 44, 45 points higher from 317. I'm just specific to GLD here. So whatever that translates to spot gold, obviously you do the math there. But round up. See GLD up to like 361. 360, 361. Now that would be pretty interesting to see happen. I think that could be possible without the stock market exploding back up. I think there could be some good divergence here. If there's a larger macro event or market event and the S&P tanks, gets brutalized, we're not talking recession, but we're talking a healthy pullback, I'm certain that GLD will come back down a bit, right? I mean, rising tide lifts most boats. So Bitcoin's not going to trade perfectly with the S&P. But anytime there's a major day in the S&P, more often than not, Bitcoin's going to be green, right? So yeah, rising tide will lift most boats. I will think that there has a chance to be some divergence here, given how strong GLD is. But if there is a larger macro event, markets take a healthy correction at first, I'm sure this will pull back. But the question is, can this contain a support? If it can't contain a support, then it's possible to have this back down to 300 or even 290. But if this flips this properly into support, then we're looking pretty good. It kind of reminds me of the Ethereum breakout if we're kind of looking at crypto for a moment. I don't have my trading view chart up, of course. Give me a quick moment here, folks. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Reminds me of Ethereum. And the longer term breakout that this has had. And this is a cryptocurrency for anyone unfamiliar, not as in the know with what we're talking about in our room with crypto. But just point being is that we have a pretty healthy resistance here back from beginning of March all the way to December. So that resistance has a pretty good shot to flip into a support. And it did here 2 weeks ago. So as long as this plays out well enough and we have resistance flip properly, that's fine. You're going to see a healthier move over time that way. But I'm just pointing out if gold fails to do this, if it pulls back and if it can't hold this into support, then you're in trouble. Right now, I don't have any reason to believe that you're in trouble or that you're going to be in trouble. But I'm just pointing out a couple criteria for you going forward. That's all. I mean, once it blew over this resistance here, this 3.5 year resistance it took the time to build, there wasn't any looking back, right? So it wouldn't shock me if this looked back a bit, if it came down and see if it holds its support this time, right? That's pretty much all I'll say there. All right, folks. Hey, we're gonna wrap up at least for right now. You got one question. We'll go to Denzel here just before we finish up. But for anyone else, private chat message me if you have a question. If I didn't get to it, private chat message me. I'll try and get back to you immediately afterwards. Denzel asking, so this stock was halted. He's talking about the HWH, I believe. The HWH trade. It was halted. It retraced and created multiple opportunities to buy breaking resistance. Simply enough, you could frame it that way. Simply enough, you could frame it that way. But how I like to frame this in a general context is every roller coaster has a top. So for a stock to be up 200%, 300, 500%, the more it keeps going up, you should be reluctant with jumping in because that eventually you're going to jump in. It's like you're going to be on the roller coaster looking down. You don't want to be that way. I actually hate roller coasters, like physical roller coaster. I got a thing with heights. So, hey, maybe it's easier for me to be more afraid here because I don't like the real thing, right? Point being, I'm being silly when I'm talking there, but you got to make sure that you're protecting yourself. So even if someone takes a trade on a more higher risk stock like this, as long as they're A, setting their stop to begin with, and then B, as long as they're comfortable with accepting the loss that they may end up taking, it's not going to ruin their day then, is it? Let's say if you're myself or if you're, Chuck or if you're Roseanne, or I could shout out a litany of other students here. If you made your days pay early and then you jump into this thing and take a loss and, you're still very well in the green on your day, it really shouldn't ruin anything for you, right? Granted, I would still normally say the more any stock goes up, you're playing a game of musical chairs, not even on a roller coaster looking down. You don't want to be in a game of musical chairs here, and certainly one where the music stops and you don't have your chair to sit in. Meaning that, hey, it's a lot tougher to get out of this stock here at this point than to get in. And especially with where it's at now, there's no guarantee it's going to come back up later today. This might make lower high, lower low, game over. So just pointing out that there are levels of risk that I look at. I'm like, yeah, I'm not trading that. That's okay. I am technically here all throughout the day, but in the mornings, I have the attitude of, well, I don't need to be, right? So if there's a stock that's not doing what I need for it to do, I got other things to do. I got other fish to fry. There's other stocks out there moving that aren't up 308.33% that, you could jump into, right? All right, folks. So, hey, that's where we're going to wrap up, at least for right now. Hey, if you're joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., break out my Gene Wilder there, Willy Wonka, etc. Down below at Cyber Trading You, just be a friend, tell a friend, and look to hit the follow and subscribe button down below. Otherwise, feel free to join us inside our live trading room. Give me a second there. Should have had that up to begin. Go right down below. If you're joining us on YouTube, exclusive offer for this week. Go right down to the link below, ctu.co/trial. Join us inside our live trading room for the week, including the beginning of next. Obviously, we were off yesterday, so you start your trial today. You get a full week with us into the beginning of next. But otherwise, that's where we're going to continue our commentary, continue our call outs, and our next broadcast there at 2:30 Eastern. So otherwise, we look forward to seeing you. But for students like Margaret, Debbie, Uday, Shaffin, Grant, all of us right now, give me a quick sec. I'm going to clear the pipes here for a bit, but we'll be back in just a moment, and we'll keep the call outs going like we just said. So I'll talk to everybody soon. Take care.